All right, we are live. I am excited to be here for another, what we hope is very valuable and informative, interesting, and who knows, maybe even entertaining Facebook Live. I'm here with B, one of the rock stars on our team, our mindset coach here. And my name is Kitty Chambliss, the founder and creator of the mission, Loving Without Boundaries. And if you're seeing this, you are a part of our community, and we want to say welcome. If you are new, we are glad that you are here getting the support, the love, the education that you need so that you can rise to the next level in living your most authentic life, ideally free from jealousy and insecurity, shame and guilt, and the pain of any ongoing infidelity. And it can be a journey to get to where you are now. I speak from experience. I am a somebody who has a cheating past and went through different things that we'll be talking about today, where maybe we're blaming outside sources for our lot in life, which can be very disempowering because then we may not be motivated to change. It can feel so easy just to kind of point the finger. And B, I want to thank you for bringing up this important topic today for our Facebook Live for our Loving Without Boundaries community. And with that, I'd love to really give you the mic and let you start us off. And I'm really excited to have this important conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Kitty, and hello, everyone. So today's topic is gonna be blame. I came up with this subject is recently I've been thought about that if I would name one of the biggest blocks in us creating the lives and relationships that we want, I would probably name it as blaming patterns without inflicting shame or blame or anyone here. I just really want to mention that these patterns are complex ones. There can be cultural, societal, and also psychological factors contributing to these blame patterns. The reason can vary from person and from situation to situation, why blame shows up in a particular situation. Plus, what's really important is that very often these patterns are not conscious patterns. So it's not like we intentionally want to blame and poison our life, our relationship with blame patterns. It might be something that came up from our early childhood environments. We soaked up as a belief. We might have learned to communicate through blame because this is what we saw from our parents, from our environment. So that's why I said that it's a complex phenomenon. And with so many limiting patterns that we have, what matters is what we do about it with self-compassion towards ourselves. So I really want to mention, since I talked about the part of the subconscious that plays in blaming patterns, is that we humans have the tendency to default into cognitive biases. And I want to mention a few here that really contribute to brain patterns. And we might not realize that actually this is where blaming patterns come from. So, for example, one cognitive bias can be that the emotion is inherent to the event, which means that I have that belief that some event happens, I fear something that means that the event was the cause, when in reality the event was a symptom of something inside of me. For example, I have a partner, Mike. We just opened our relationship. He goes on his first date, and I'm overrun with jealousy and anxiety and fear of abandonment as well. While Mike is excited about that, his parents were disappointed because he's not able to follow the dream son role and have a monogamous relationship, while Mike's daughter might be angry at her dad because it means less time for her. So I just wanted to highlight with this example that in the event that Mike goes on a date, the emotion that I get jealous is not inherent because each and every one of us can have a very different response. There's another cognitive bias that can show up pretty often in the human condition, which only means that we are human, not that we are defective human beings. And I really wanted to highlight that, is we believe or we feel that our emotion covers the truth about the event. So, for example, if I feel criticized, if I feel abandoned, If I feel judged, that equals that I'm being abandoned, I'm being criticized, and I'm being abandoned as well. So the point is that because I have this feeling, I believe that this is what is actually going on, and that can default us to blaming patterns and point the finger outside of ourselves. There's another pattern as well that shows up really often, is that we attribute our own behavior, why we do certain things, to external circumstances completely outside of us, while we see in other people's that if they show up with a behavior that annoys us, that we feel critical about, it's down to their nature of being defective human beings. And if we have these kind of belief systems that we run, these programs, then it's really easy to see how we end up blaming others, judging others, or maybe blaming ourselves as well in failing certain situations in life. For example, blaming ourselves for having jealous feelings or having abandonment fears. Just to go a little bit deeper, how blaming patterns can show up, I like to approach it from 3 angles: when we blame others, when we are on the receiving end of blame, and when we blame ourselves. So when we blame others, actually that's a quite common phenomenon, which I again said that has a complex background, can come from many sources. We basically, with this, give away our own power, because we put our attention outside of ourselves, and we keep creating tension and conflict in relationships. That's not going to help with trust, and that's not going to help with communication. So we are likely to experience a breakdown in both in the safety of the relationship and the communication over time. And if we put the source of our abundance outside of ourselves, and if we're not ready for whatever reason to examine our own internal patterns, then we can become dependent on our environment, including people as well, because we run that kind of belief system and pattern that the world needs to change, other people need to change for me to feel better, because they are the root cause. It has nothing to do with me. When we blame others, from this perspective, we're going to end up with reduced problem solving, because we're going to focus on frustration, resentment, and anger, and not the constructive way of solving certain problems. And sometimes we can end up with implementing rules in our relationship versus boundaries. The other aspect that can show up if we blame others is that we can undermine consent. And I want to circle back to what you shared, Kiri, at the beginning, that you cheated at a certain phase of your life, which was true to me as well. And if we were to look at it from a blaming perspective, we could say that it was because of my partner, because something wasn't right in the relationship and I felt the need that I had to cheat, and completely blame the circumstances or other people or the relationship dynamic. And how this is connected to the lack of informed consent, that if we tend to be on the receiving end of the blame often, if our relationship is a place of constant reactivity, then we might feel that our only option is to lie, to go behind the back of someone else, and to cheat, which means that we undermine the informed consent of the other person, because they don't have the information available to them at a timely manner so that they can say an enthusiastic yes to the relationship. They don't know what is going on because we go behind their back. So to switch to the being on the receiving end of blame, over a long period of time, it can be extremely draining in ourselves. And even if we don't absorb that blame personally, we can really end up with eroded self-esteem and a negative view of ourselves, because we start to internalize that part of blame. Basically, we may end up gaslighting ourselves that, is this person right? I'm wondering, because they keep saying and saying, and we just start looking into ourselves and questioning ourselves. So this can really have a detrimental effect on our well-being, and we might feel that we need to protect ourselves constantly because there's this attack on our system. So we really show up from an activated threat system, whether we blame someone else, whether we're on the receiving end of the blame, or whether we turn that attack towards ourselves and blame ourselves. For example, the form of self-criticism. When we do that, we're gonna run the risk of reducing the quality of our lives to a great degree. And as I said, it's gonna be us living from an activated threat system, from a place of anxiety, anger, frustration, trapped in self-doubt, which gonna narrow our perception of our world. It's gonna narrow what we see as possibilities. We won't be able to see solutions because we're gonna live in a really constricted state where the main aim is gonna be us to protect ourselves and us to be safe. Because if we blame ourselves as a form of self-attack, we can just add some pain to an already painful situation.
Thank you for all that, B. That was, and it's really, I can see resonating with different people who are watching. So I'd love to hear from you if this topic is resonating with you, if you are seeing maybe either yourself or your partners in these kind of patterns that we're talking about. I'd love it if you'd share that in the comments, and I'll just expand a little bit more on this really important topic, B. Thank you for bringing it up. So just to underscore some of what B is saying, I'm totally in alignment that when we get into that place of wanting to look externally for why maybe we're not having good feelings, or feeling maybe icky or upset, or as B was suggesting, resentful or angry, if we're kind of pointing fingers, we're really disempowering ourselves, kind of in some ways putting ourselves in more a scarcity or even a victim mindset, because it's as if we're giving our power away to other people, as if they have control over our well-being. So assuming you're a consenting adult and you are in a situation where you have free will, right? Instead of moving into a blaming pattern, a great thing to do is to be able to say, what can I do to raise my own emotional state? What can I do to get into a better place in this relationship, or these relationships? And that way you can turn the tables and become a more empowered person. Because to what B was saying, if we are feeling either attacked or we're doing the attacking by doing the blaming, that's when we can get in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, which can be very triggering. And from that fight, flight, or freeze mode, our empathetic brain shuts down. Our ability to make rational decisions also shuts down. So, in exact alignment to what B was saying, you're not able to solve problems either in your own life or in your relationships when that happens. So it is a two-way street, that if we are kind of pointing the finger outside of ourselves, that that can land as a judgment or an attack, which then may cause the other person to feel the need to defend themselves, which then takes us down into what we call getting on the field of battle. And then it becomes like a lose-lose situation. And even with blaming, it could come across as, I need to be right here and you are wrong, which still creates a win, quote unquote, lose situation. But in the end, nobody really wins. You're not getting to any resolution. And I'll just expand on that a little bit more in terms of understanding what is in our control versus what is out of our control. And then in the middle is what we can maybe have a positive influence on, so that what B was saying earlier, like we could be creating rules where we're attempting to control other people. And that can be where blaming patterns can start to show up. You need to change what you're doing so that I feel okay. That can be where we're really attempting to control other people. The positive side of this, the more empowered side, is instead of kind of pointing the fingers and blaming and giving our power away, learning how to have healthy boundaries. What are your values? Remembering what are your rights and relationships, and then setting up healthy boundaries, because that's within your zone of influence. That's what you can have a positive impact on. So if this is resonating with you, feel free to type in the chat, and I'm happy to share some stories here on this, but I want to give the mic back over to you, B, and just see how anything else that you might want to add here.
Yes, absolutely, Kiri. I'm so glad that you shared what you just shared right now, because in my head I was nodding that, yeah, I can definitely recognize my old self here. And yes, so check. So something came up from my own life, that's something that feels very distant now because I'm on the other side of it, but I really want to share in case this resonates with someone. So I would say that for about 20 years, I lived a very, very extreme blaming patterns, and all of my blame and anger and frustration and judgments and criticisms were directed towards my parents. Because, I noticed that certain attachment injuries appeared, and I struggled in life in many ways, and I could I understand at an earlier age as well that there was some connection between how I was raised, the patterns, the very disempowering patterns, and the toxic environment that I grew up in, how that affected me. So my go-to, because that's again a pattern that I soaked up from myself, was to blame the external world completely. I'm not shaming myself here, not judging myself, and not judging absolutely anyone who has this particular view. To me, it was simply that I had no other reference point, because this is what I saw in my environment growing up, that if you struggle, if you're in pain, then you start pointing the finger outside and expect other people, or try to control other people and the world to change in ways so that you feel better about yourself. So I lived like that for 20 years with loads and loads of anger and a very turbulent relationship with my parents as well. The most painful part for me here was that although I really needed help and support, what I did was I suppressed many things and simply was focusing on blaming, because when you blame, you don't do anything else. You don't work towards the solution, as you mentioned, Kiri. So I just inflicted more injury on myself with being just frustrated. And you did this to me. I want you to change. How dare you? The only thing that it did, it added more negative emotional charge to my life. So it simply deepened that complex trauma that I struggled with. The other part that was painful is that due to all of these stress hormones that can come from anger, frustration, and anxiety, my health started deteriorating in many ways, including having really strong panic attacks, generalized anxiety, and OCD as well. It was just too much accumulation of this negative charge in my body. And what else I noticed is that I really did the process of elimination. I was like, okay, let's change the world outside of me. I was subconsciously hoping, not intentionally, that the next job, the next place, the next town, the next country, the next person, the next thing that I have in my life somehow are gonna help me to feel better in my life. It took me 20 years to come to that pain point that this is actually not true. It's not helping. I noticed that I was stuck in this loop. Basically, I repeated the very same story, no matter where I went, no matter what relationships I had, no matter what jobs I had. The same story repeated itself, the same disempowering story, only the players were different. Mm-hmm. So that's when I reached out to you, Kiri, and you started hammering it in my head with tough love and loads of love that hold on a sec. Let's focus on here what you have control over and what you don't have control over. So that was really my breakthrough, just understanding that no matter how angry I am, no matter how much I try to control the world and the weather and finances and whatever, it's likely not gonna happen that I feel better. I can feel better with distractions and new people, new places for a short period of time, But at the end of the day, the underlying issue is not going to disappear. It's just simply a distraction. So I need to do something. I need to stop and observe what's going on inside me and unpack that. And that was the biggest turning point for me to understand that, okay, I'm not happy about dropping the blame, but there's no other way than taking responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just I love that coming back to that concept of personal responsibility, right? There's going into a blaming pattern, and then there's empowering yourself by understanding that you are responsible for your own happiness, your own fulfillment, and standing on the shoulders of that. So thanks for your vulnerable share there, B. And look at how far you've come. It's incredible. So I can give a different stories, but one story I'll share here is that before I started doing coaching work, I was a creative director at an advertising agency, and I'd worked my entire career, starting from a graphic designer, working my way up to art director, to eventually a creative director. I thought that that would be the peak of exactly what I wanted. I always wanted to be a creative director. And for various reasons, the last 5 years of that 26-year career, I found out that I was miserable. I didn't want to be doing that anymore. And I got in this pattern of blaming my two bosses, blaming the people that worked under me, for why I was so unhappy, blaming the world for just everything. And it wasn't productive. And it took me to have my own breakthroughs. Like there was a moment where just I had enough was enough. I was in a situation where I felt like my authority had been undermined. And I thought, why am I allowing this to happen? I think that's really what the epiphany was, because then I came from a place of personal responsibility. Why am I allowing this to happen? And then that put me in a more of a power position of what can I do to change this? And I literally quit the very next day. And it took me 5 months to leave, but it eventually was changed the trajectory of my life, was getting out of some of those blaming and also kind of poor me, victim mentality kind of thoughts, and more, how can I live my best life? What do I need to do here? And even though it was scary, I was able to quit my job. I eventually studied to become a internationally certified coach, and now I absolutely love what I do, serving this community, getting to work with people like yourselves. B, it's such an honor and a privilege. So if I can do it, so can anybody here, in terms of like being able to recognize your patterns that you're in and get out of it. And that's where sometimes having outside perspective can be really, really helpful, because these patterns can become ingrained sometimes for decades, and you don't realize that you could be your own worst enemy sometimes. I say that with no judgment. We've all been there, all of us. So it is really powerful to know that you can change some of these patterns by practicing self-awareness, maybe looking to get some help outside of yourself, learning how to stay out of those fight, flight, and freeze modes, those triggers, learning how to desensitize those triggers so that you can learn to develop more empathy and understanding. So, and I'll give the baton back to you, B, to kind of start to bring us home, and then I'll shore up our conversation here in case anybody else is needing help in our world here.
Thank you so much for your vulnerable share. It's always a pleasure to learn more about your journey. I love that you highlighted that you stepped into self-awareness and accountability to noticing that, hold on, how am I contributing to this? How am I allowing this? And this is definitely so important, that sometimes it can feel like, you know what, it's not my problem. The other person is doing is they contributed. I can say that similarly to that, I saw it with my parents, that of course they contributed to my attachment injuries. But the question is that, do I have the resources to change my life? And do I want to get results? Because if I want to have results, then the way it's going to be owning the problem so that I can own the solution as well. Because if I think that it's going to depend on other people, they have to change, then I likely have to wait for a very long time. And just to bring it back to my own story, now I'm really happy to say and proud to say that my relationship with my parents has never been better, never been more functional, not because they did any work on themselves, because I owned the problem, that this is going to be my problem to transform, to process that complex trauma that I took from my childhood. And it's going to be my empowered decision to change the relationship dance with them. And this is exactly what I did. I let go of disempowering patterns. I practiced that lots of self-awareness, Katie, first just noticing what was going on inside me, what was going on behind the blaming patterns, and started making amends and just see them as autonomous human beings who did the best with the tools that they could. So I feel so much distance now from this blame patterns, and it all started with first examining what was going on and then owning the problem.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations on how far you've come with your relationship with your parents. It's so beautiful to hear that. It really gets me in the heart place. My parents are no longer here on the planet, so I love that your parents are still here and using a lot of the tools that we help people with. You were able to transform those relationships, so that really, really gets me in the feels. So with that, just if I love what you said there, being able to ask that question, do I have the resources to change my life? And am I ready and willing to make those changes so that I can live my best life? And what I've also seen is that there is always a way for people who are truly committed to their own emotional, mental, and physical well-being, as well as the well-being of their most cherished relationships, even when we're coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy. And honestly, we probably need more help when we're coloring outside the lines of heteronormative monogamy, because I often say no one's taught us how to be in a healthy monogamous relationship, let alone taught us how to do something more untraditional, right? So that can be really important to have the support system so that you can move from that mindset of life is happening to me, and instead change that into and transform that into life is for me, which puts you in a more empowered position. With that, if anyone here in our beautiful community, we are so happy that you are here. If you are needing any more support, if you do want to talk about what it might look like to work with a mentor, with a coach, to learn how to transform your life for the better and change the trajectory of the rest of your life, like be so vulnerably shared, like I shared with my story as well, I invite you to consider booking a call at lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. If you do go to that link, that will simply take you into my calendar. You simply find a time that works for you. There'll be a brief form for you to fill out that sets us up for success on that conversation, gives me a little bit of context for where you're at, what you're struggling with, so I can start to get to work thinking of a game plan and seeing, are we a fit and can I help you? And once we have that conversation, if we're not a fit, that's okay. I will do my best to steer you in the best direction for you. I will do everything I can to serve you to the best of my ability on that call. So if you are struggling, if you do want some help getting out of any patterns that are maybe getting in the way of you living your best life, then I invite you to take that step, which is a step that B took over 2.5 years ago that led to us having this conversation today. So again, that's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. Either way, know that we love you. We are so happy that you are here in our community, getting the support and the care and the education that you need. We love having these dialogues with you, and know that we're honored to be here with you. It's an honor and a privilege to serve you. Be anything else you'd like to say? It looks like your mic went off.
My apologies.
Okay.
I just read that comment. I don't know who wrote it because I can't see that. Book the call. It's life changing. And yeah, as I shared my story and I listened to you, it absolutely is.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to just circle back to what you shared, that sometimes that outside help is needed. And I probably couldn't have done that because there can be patterns that if no one shows us the mirror from the outside, like from the outside of the jar, that analogy that you keep using, sometimes we just don't know what's going on inside us, and we need to look under the hood to see what's there. And sometimes a professional can help to point at maybe even one or two questions that, oh, wow, I never thought about that. How amazing is that? And that starts a spark that ignites something, a real transformation and change. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say, that, yeah, absolutely best decision for me in my life.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And our friend on Facebook here, and I actually meant to read one of the comments of, it sounds like somebody who has done the work here with us, literally done the work and been through our life-changing process. And earlier when I was talking about boundaries, they said, as I've done more boundary work, I've empowered my partners with strong boundaries. We are experiencing less blame and more connection. Amazing, right? These are the types of transformations that can happen when you make that commitment, you decide to do the work, and you decide to get the help that you need now, not months from now, not years from now, after more years of suffering. You know, you don't have to unnecessarily suffer. You can get the help that you need. So again, with that, thank you for watching, whether you're watching live or watching the recording. We are glad that you are here. And B, thank you again for this really, really important topic. I love having you here as part of the team. All right. Take care, everyone. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.